Hi guys, this video is the follow-up on one of the recent videos I made on the timeless principle, and I got a question in the comment section where a person asked about the fearful reaction to knowing what time it is and how we can work with this reaction and overcome it. So for anyone who hasn't seen the original video on timeless principle, I encourage you to do that. You might find something helpful, but just to briefly say what the timeless principle is for recovery, in the sense of recovery. It is basically the idea of letting go of trying to track or measure our sleep performance. Insomnia really thrives on our desire to control it, our desire to, our pressure to sleep. And therefore, this pressure translates into more wakefulness, into more hyperarousal, which makes sleep very difficult. So letting go of trying to measure or checking what time it is at night can be really helpful because it can take our minds off of sleep performance and just focus on how we basically feel at night, making choices towards less pressure and more pleasure or more comfort, as opposed to trying really, really hard to fall asleep. So, and this principle is also very nuanced because I personally, applied it on my journey. I found immense benefit in that, but I also struggled or stumbled upon the kind of like the limitation there, which I briefly touched in the previous video, but I think there is a bit more to say to this. So we usually begin this journey with a really strong attachment to knowing how we are performing sleep. So we kind of like start with one kind of extreme where we check our, check what time it is, check how long we still have until we need to get up, or how long we've slept, or what time it is, and things like that. And it may become some sort of an obsession where we constantly monitor our performance, and this does not end up being very helpful for us. But then when we learn to let go of not checking time, what can happen also is that we might fall for another trap, which is like we go to another extreme where we try to avoid time at all costs, and we build some sort of fear towards knowing what time it is, because we think that by accidentally seeing time, we are sabotaging our recovery process, and we feel very stressful about it. So now our efforts face or are directed at not seeing the time, and oftentimes people find themselves in a place where they feel strong need to check the time, but yet they are so fearful of checking the time. So it kind of like they are suppressing, they spend a lot of energy on trying to not know what time it is. So basically for them, the experience of the night becomes very, very stressful, very, very pressuring experience. So which makes the whole point of the timeless principle, useless, because the general goal of that is to help us feel less pressured to be awake at night. And when that translates into more pressure to avoid time, that is also something that we need to revisit and maybe adjust a little bit our approach here. So what can happen is that we might develop a fear of knowing the time at night. And usually people experience some sort of like a fearful, anxiety wave reaction once they know the time. Let's say I go on my computer and I open Netflix and I want to watch something, but then there is a time in the corner of my screen, and then my eyes kind of are drawn to look at it, right? And when I see it, and then instantly I might get this kind of like emotional response to it. So many people get scared at that time. They feel like they are sabotaging their journey, they feel more pressured to sleep, and then they regret checking time. They might be very judgmental of themselves for doing that. But the way how to overcome this problem, because we don't want to indefinitely avoid time at all costs for indefinite amount of time, because I don't feel like this is the true freedom. True freedom is when our actions, whatever we do, is not really, how to say, a condition for sleep. So this is what I feel like when we go from one extreme to another, none of them are really helpful. So the piece, the answer lies somewhere in between. So when we develop the fear of knowing what time it is not really helpful to keep avoiding time. Of course, we don't need to resort again like to monitoring our time excessively, but we also can start helping our brain to feel more comfortable even with knowing what time it is. And I know it can contradict the idea of timeless principle, but this is what I found for myself when I encountered this situation where I was so afraid of knowing what time it is that I became some sort of like a prisoner to that rule, which was not really helpful. This is where I started to slowly desensitize myself towards seeing time and basically changing my reaction towards it. So the way how we work with it is basically even or when we happen to know what time it is, we usually get this fearful reaction. The first, this kind of like a wave of like anxiety, like, oh my God, I this is like, I don't know, 3 a.m. and I haven't slept at all. And, all this kind of thoughts. And this reaction, first of all, it is very automatic. It is not something that we consciously choose to feel. So there is no need to judge ourselves for not for reacting to it this way, because we are not choosing this reaction. Instead, what we can do is to get ourselves more comfortable to be with this reaction. In a way, we kind of like even expect this reaction when we know time, when we see time. And with that openness to experience this reaction, we gradually let our brain to become familiar with it. It is like the analogy here I use is basically, when you go to the sea and you go in, like, get into water, the first reaction there when your body temperature meets the temperature of the water is basically this kind of like shock, and we get this urge to, get out quickly from the water. But if we stayed there a bit longer, just let ourselves or let our body to get used to this, to the temperature, to this initial shock, when we allow that shock to happen, after a while, we get very kind of like used to it. And we don't even notice that we are in the water. The temperatures become like balanced, and there's no reaction anymore. So in a similar way, this is how we can also approach our initial responses to triggering things, such as like, happen to check what time it is. So we come into this like knowing that, okay, if this reaction arises, it's completely normal reaction. And this way we help ourselves to, let go of the fear of knowing what time it is, and let go of the fear of the reaction when we check the time. So this can be really helpful, because what I noticed on myself, that with time, the more kind of I was, making myself more comfortable with this experience, with time I started noticing that I'm not really reacting that much. Even though I'm allowing this reaction to happen, I know that this is what my brain will do, and I'm coming into this experience already knowing that, yes, my brain is very likely to react like this, and I'm ready to, ready to experience it. I started noticing that this reaction was becoming less and less intense, until I was not even bothered by occasionally seeing what time it is. It literally like stopped doing anything to me. It stopped having any sort of like emotional or like a thought response when I happened to look at time. So this is how I really desensitized myself, like or kind of like overcame that fear. And at the same time, I still kept the knowledge, the insight that I don't have to track, I don't have to obsessively check my time. But I knew that even if I happen to know what time it is, I'm still going to be okay. So this knowledge, this kind of like acceptance of both, of both realities, that helped me to become more okay to be at night. I was no longer afraid to do activities such as watching something on my laptop, because I was, originally I was afraid of knowing the time. I knew that even if I happen to enjoy something like on laptop and I happen to see time and I happen to, have the reaction, it is completely normal. I'm not really sabotaging my journey. I'm not, holding myself back from progress, because first of all, I'm not doing it with the intention to control my sleep. It is something that simply happens and it is not a big deal. So when we approach this with this kind of like it's not a big deal, but we understand we don't have to obsessively control, or obsessively check our time. This is when we become free from the fear of knowing what time it is and from the need to always check for time. So I hope that this clarified a few things if you found yourself in this kind of situation. And yeah, let me know what you think about this, and we'll see each other in next videos. Bye.